I'm Helen Prance. I'm an electronics engineer in engineering and design. I teach a course in the autumn term of year one to all of our new students, which introduces them to where technology is now. And as part of it, they're assessed by an oral presentation, individual oral presentation. So what I'm going to talk about is oral presentations in general, because they're used widely across the university, and what you should think about if you're asked to give an oral presentation. So, why would you be asked to give an oral presentation as part of a course? There's a couple of reasons that we use oral presentations, and the most obvious one is because it's very important that as part of education, students learn how to present themselves as individuals, verbally, in public, for many future applications, interviews, all sorts, talks, whatever. So we want to make sure that students have got the skills that they need to do that. And the other aspect of it is that it's a very good way of assessing an individual's understanding of the material, because they have to present it and explain it themselves, and therefore have to understand themselves. So it is something that comes up across a lot of different university programmes. And the assessment criteria will usually include certainly the aspect of how do you present the information verbally in public. It can also include the content, whether you did the research, how you understood the material, but it will also, as I say, include the way you present it, the way you come over in a sort of performance. So there are some key things to remember when you are preparing an oral presentation, and the performance aspect leads to quite a nice acronym, and it's ACT, A-C-T. And the A is for audience, the C is for clarity, and the T is for timing. And those are the three key things you have to think about. So A, for audience. When you're considering the presentation you're going to give, it's absolutely vital that you think about the people you're going to be talking to. You need to think about who they're going to be, why they're there listening to you, what they want to hear from you, and how much they may know already about whatever it is you're going to say. So, for example, you might have some material that you present on a number of occasions to different audiences, but you should never present it in exactly the same way, because what one audience wants to hear and what they know and the way they listen to you is going to be different to another audience. So that's the first thing about audience, why they're there. And the other aspect about when you think about your audience is how are you going to engage the audience? How are you going to keep them with you in a sort of almost a dialogue, but where you're doing the speaking and they're responding by listening and reacting to what you're saying? So you need to think about the way you project your voice, the way you maintain eye contact with people in the audience, the way you're sensitive to whether they're following what you're saying, or whether they want to ask a question, or whether you need to go over something again because they haven't followed. And if you can do that, then the audience will empathise with you, and they will listen to what you say, and they will want to hear you say more, and they will follow you, because they will know you've thought about them. So that's the A, that's the audience. The next letter is C, and I said it was for clarity. And that means the clarity of the content of what you're going to say. And the way that you make that content clear is through structuring your presentation, maintaining interest throughout the presentation, and understanding what it is you're presenting and explaining it to your audience. So the best way to structure a presentation is to start by making the audience understand what you're going to be telling them and how you're going to go about doing it. Because then they have a map ahead of them. They can see how you're going to use the time ahead, and they can see what to expect you to be covering. And that makes them feel comfortable. And if you don't do that, then you find the audience becoming disorientated and uncomfortable and thinking, I wonder how long this is going to go on for, and I wonder where they're going to go next, and where is this taking us to? So the map at the beginning sets the structure, and throughout the presentation, and this can depend a lot on how long it is, you need to keep referring back to that map and keep your audience following this route through what you're presenting. And then the other part of clarity is, do you understand what you're talking about? Because there is no way that you can make an audience understand whatever the material is if you don't understand it yourself. And in general, it's a very bad idea to talk about something that you don't really understand, because an audience will rapidly pick up on the fact that you don't understand it. There are exceptions to this. Occasionally, you may present something you don't understand if your purpose is to ask the audience to help you understand it. And this is particularly true in research or in a research-based project, where maybe something occurred that you couldn't fully explain, but you can present it to the audience and say, this is still not fully explained, but perhaps you may have some ideas about it. And that's fine if you're honest with them. And it's that clarity of understanding that very often is being assessed, because, as I say, it's very hard for an individual verbally to help other people understand things if they don't, and therefore it demonstrates how much you understand. So those three things, the structure, the interest and the understanding, together give the clarity of the presentation. And then the final letter act is T, and that's timing. And it's exactly what it says. You will always be given a length of time to fill, to speak for. And very often it will be a length of time, possibly with some time additional for questions, or a length of time including questions. But usually you're told how long you're going to speak for. And it is imperative that you use that time. If you're familiar with the story of Goldilocks, you don't want it to be too short, you don't want it to be too long, you want it to be just right. Too short is not such a problem for the audience. They might feel shortchanged if it's very short, but they won't usually feel disgruntled or irritated by a short presentation. But if you're being assessed on a presentation, then whoever is assessing it will feel disgruntled, because they will feel that you could have used more material or explained it better or structured your talk better to use the time that you had been given. So you will not do well on your assessment if you speak for too short a time. Too long is the thing that really upsets an audience. They will know how long you're supposed to take. They may well have to listen to other presentations after you. And they know that if you go on too long, the next person will start late, and they could go on too long, and you could all still be here by the end of the day. And it's almost a form of bad manners to take more time than you were supposed to over a presentation. So just as you thought about the audience before you started preparing the presentation, you think about, how long have I been given? And the amount of material and the way you present it for a 5-minute presentation will be different from a 10-minute, will be different from a half an hour, will be different for a 50-minute lecture. All of this comes with practice. You learn how much you can present in a given length of time. And if it's your first attempt at an oral presentation, the way you get practice is literally by practicing it. Practicing it to your friends, to your mirror, to your dog, and time yourself. And if it comes out too long, too short, then change the presentation. Don't think, oh, I must go faster or I must go slower, and fit it in. You change the presentation, you change the number of slides you're using, and then practice again and see if it works. And that way you will do the just right timing, you will achieve a good assessed result, and you will make your audience, above all, very happy with you. So there are a number of other aspects associated with oral presentations which may well be specific to the particular course you're doing. So some courses may require you to use PowerPoint as a visual aid. Some may require you to give handouts or allow time for questions or add on time for questions and so on. But what you need to remember is that you will always be provided with guidance on these aspects, and that can come in the form of information on course websites, study direct sites, guidance through the many communication skills textbooks that there are in the library, in the bookshop, online resources about the best way to use PowerPoint, which is a source of great contention. Some people hate it, some people love it, but it is very often used. And links to some of this guidance will be provided on the S3 website to help you find it. But you should also use whatever guidance your course lecturer suggests that you use, and follow it, and think about the aspects as you're practicing in front of your mirror with your notes and your watch to make sure that you've really performing and acting with your ACT in the best way you possibly can.